If you want to know where the economy is headed, just follow the trucks. It may seem painfully obvious, but sometimes the most simple solution is the best. And it's actually quite easy to track the freight using the Trucking Tonnage Index, published monthly by the American Trucking Association, the ATA. This is a go to source of information for all things related to freight and shipping. As it turns out, this also serves as a great barometer of economic growth. And by the way, the reason we should focus our attention to trucking, very simply, over 72% of all domestic freight is carried by trucks. Raw materials, manufactured goods, retail products. Without trucking, companies like Amazon, Walmart, Costco, they simply would not exist. So where are we now? Let's consider the Truck Tonnage Index. It was created in 2015 with a baseline of 100. Rising values indicate increased levels of freight carried across the country. The reason why we're talking about this today, well, the index just touched levels we haven't seen in over a year, and that's pretty significant. Again, it should not be understated. Trucking freight is highly correlated to economic growth, GDP. In blue, the truck tonnage index. In yellow, retail sales over the past few years. It makes sense that as shoppers' appetite has slowly grown over time, so has the freight capacity crisscrossing the countryside. Here again, the trucking index in blue and the housing starts in red. Trucking is crucial in construction. And now, with the Fed cutting rates with the hope of stimulating the housing market, trucking capacity gradually ticks higher. This is all well and fine, but we ultimately need to know, how can this help my investment decisions? Well, we've crunched the numbers, lots of data. This shows the 2 year correlations between the trucking index and the many select spider ETFs we talk about a lot here. What's really interesting is we ran the calculations with various offsets. In simple terms, we wanted to see if there's a lag between the freight carried today and stock prices to follow. Well, let's get right to the point. The exchange traded fund that has the highest correlation to our trucking data is XES, oil and gas equipment. But here's the key, there's a delayed effect. The truck tonnage occurring 8 months ago strongly predicts gains in XES today. Freight surges tend to lead to booms in energy services such as drilling and oil field activity. But this is not all. There's also a significant connection between truck tonnage and XOP, oil and gas exploration. You can certainly see the message behind the data. Oil pipes and equipment are shipped before drilling booms ensue. By tracking the trucking tonnage, we can simply follow the money to the oil fields. What else can we learn from this data? Well, let's talk about housing. Now, this data may take you by surprise, but it's actually quite logical. Just looking at the raw numbers, there's actually a negative correlation to trucking tonnage and XHB, the home builder ETF. Historical studies prove that when freight capacities rise, housing actually declines. But wait, how is that possible? It makes no sense. The numbers are illogical because XHB leads trucking. In other words, the housing stocks move before the trucking index. In the prior example, trucking capacities rise and then the oil stocks tend to follow. But here the home builder stocks move before the trucking data. How is this possible? The best way to illustrate this phenomenon is to begin with the banks, the central bank in particular. You see, the housing market is somewhat unique. The purchase of a home is usually the largest we'll make. And because we typically borrow money to do so, the housing market is quite sensitive to interest rates. So we wait for interest rates to drop before pulling the trigger. This increases our buying power and in turn stimulates the housing market. Home builders sense an uptick in demand, land is purchased, goods are ordered, and the trucks are dispatched. At this stage, our trucking tonnage data is generated. The next thing we know, new housing developments emerge seemingly overnight. But these housing projects were set into motion a long time before, when the Fed began cutting rates, perhaps even beforehand. Because the housing market is so closely tied to interest rates, this gives us a sneak preview to economic trends yet to happen. This is not so much the case as we deliberate the purchase of an iPad or a new pair of shoes. In orange, the truck tonnage data. In blue, XHB, the home builder ETF. In early 2024, XHB began to surge. The trucking data followed around a year later. Again, the market by nature is a forward looking mechanism. The latest trend in XHB was sparked by the anticipation of lower rates yet to come. So, what do you think? What's your opinion as to the current state of the economy? Are we on the mend, or are there dark clouds lurking just over the horizon? Does the trucking data have it right? Also, join us at Substack, link in the description. We hope this has been helpful. We look forward to seeing you back soon.